This hasn't been seen in 112 years. No one has seen snow. This is a very rare shot from Rocky Rumble's channel on YouTube. Live, this is one for the record. I'm Diana, and today is December 16th. We made it through the Mayan calendar 2013. Keep your eyes to the sky, though. And, we made it. Hooray! Now, there's extreme weather going on in New York. Also, in Vermont. Very cold. It's in the negatives. I did do a show twice now, and it's not going through, so we're going to do this real fast. Nothing much has changed, technically. It's the same thing going on. E&E News is not really reporting anything new, except for what we already know what's going to happen. So, they're just talking about how the radiation has gone up all over the place. And it's the worst thing that's ever happened to mankind. But mainstream media doesn't want to report on it, even though it's like the worst thing that's ever happened to us. So, alrighty then. Also, Big Sur is on fire right now. Heads up. And everybody, please be safe out there. I'm just going to attach videos. I might attach Dr. Deagle. I can't upload like the main one from Friday, so I already have Thursdays. Haha. So hopefully this will upload. Not sure yet. So take care. Be safe. It's even cold here in Florida. It's getting colder and colder. The sky's very clear. So, maybe you can keep your eyes to the sky and see if you see any kind of alignments. And, but we've made it so far. And, I guess the pets are asleep. There you go. They're crashed out on the comforter. So, everybody take care. Stay tuned, I'm attaching videos, and I'll see you again on the flip side. Stay safe, and be prepared for anything still. But trust in God, Jesus. Because you're not alone. And basically, we're all turning this over to God. Let God handle this problem with Fukushima, and let God also work out all the other problems that are going on. Alrighty then. Take care, be safe, and I'll see you tomorrow on the flip side.
Welcome back to the NutriMedical Report, and we have a surprise and a treat. We have Professor James McCanney. Professor McCanney, we want to have you to continue in the next hour as well. But in this hour, let's talk about health issues. You're the master of plasma physics, and the body is a plasma physical object. And we talked about this in some of the other shows. I'm writing a book called Quantum Functional Medicine, and let's just look at what a living organism is. Living organisms require water. Water is an informational superconductor. In any tissue, if you have radioisotopes like Fukushima, basically they steal electrons, and the tissue becomes electron deficient, which means it's also acid. Acidic tissues build up toxins and stealth pathogens. They change the energetics of the mitochondria. They go from aerobics, which is for every glucose molecule you get 32 ATP, you're down to 2 ATP for each glucose molecule because you go through the hexose monophosphate shunt, which is not very efficient. And as a result, the cell goes into anaerobic metabolism, which is less than 5% of the cellular energy. What happens is that it manifests abnormal proteins, the mitochondria start to fail, and the cell gets what's called a death signal, where you stop building and making new mitochondria. A lot of this plasma physics is never taught to doctors. They're not taught that the body basically is, in a sense, every cell in the body is like a liquid crystal microprocessor supercomputer, and that every cell is using what's called harmonic resonance to activate specific enzymes and DNA sections. And that harmonic resonance interprets the DNA almost like hierarchical computer code. I expressed this theory 32 years ago to a panel of biophysicists at the University of Calgary and built harmonic resonance morphogenic field generating machines, which I built with a government grant 2 years ago, working with a PhD electrical engineer, physicist. So the plasma physics of the body also explains the plasma physics of Earth and our solar system. Everything, as it says, is above, below. So tell us some of your theories about the physical body, and then it also deals with the body of our planet. We have to think of the Earth as a living thing. It is. And also our solar system, in a sense, because it's a plasma solar system and a plasma universe. In a sense, the solar system is alive. It's a system of plasma or transfer of energy. And so is the galaxy. These are not non-living, in a sense, things. There are organized systems of informational and energy transfer that often ties directly into the plasma physics. So tell us a little bit about your theory on plasma physics of physical bodies.
Well, the body is in constant communication with the central nervous system. Every cell in your body is hooked into basically your backbone. And then these feed up into your brain for control. And what happens with the vast majority of people, starting when they're actually young, they will do certain things. Let's take a really simple example. A woman, 18 years old, starts carrying her purse on her right side. She always carries it on her right side. Right. This starts adjusting the signals in your body. In 5 years, you'll find that the back muscles have adjusted. They've bent the backbone. You're starting to get weak signals to the liver, and this is affecting her health, and she doesn't know that it's caused by her carrying the purse on the right side all the time. You know,
in other words, you're changing
how the body works. Or let's take a person who sits at a job. Or the worst thing is you can take kids when they're 5 years old or now 3. You put them in a classroom and they sit there until they're 18 years old, and then if they go for advanced training, they sit more. One of the worst things you can do to your body is sit there a lot. And we do it. I'm one of the worst culprits. But it's amazing what we do to our bodies, and which breaks down the communication in the body, and then we wonder why we're not feeling well.
Exactly.
So the body is a tremendous communication network, and we do very simple but very stupid things to break down this communication. And so I understand exactly what you're doing.
Right. So, for example, we use enzymes
to get their body to communicate again.
Well, we get the body alkaline. The first two things we recommend right off the bat is Power C+, which is the only mixed mineral ascorbate, and Nutritrala, the only long-acting alpha-lipoic acid with biotin in the world. And then we add NutriComplete and other nutraceuticals like our mitocarnitine, mitochondrial catalyst, CoQ10 Supreme, CoQ10 Supreme Ubiquinol, which are the only non-polymerizing CoQ10s in the world also. We use that to increase energetics. We use things like acetylcarnitine and D-ribose to increase ATP and increase the redox of the cells, and the electron density, which was what Linus Pauling talked about. When we get people in an alkaline state, when we have remineralization with things like indiamines, 49 in the periodic table that acts as a chaperone, when we use detox technologies such as our non-acid wash zeolite, Keeler Max, removing xenotoxins like NutriDefense and xenoestrogen detox, we use adjunctive energetic technologies like far and near infrared therapies such as lumen photon, Soma Pulse, Metathera pulse magnetic field therapy, which is like a Tesla therapy. We now have new technologies for diagnosis like the QRMA that measure quantum resonant magnetic analysis, developed by Dr. Yu Zhang from Taiwan, who actually came to MIT for some years. And we have the Russian-based system developed over 34 years of collaborative research with American scientists called the 3D NLS that actually does this thermodynamics and body harmonic analysis right down to organs and specific cells and tissue organelles. So you can actually diagnose and even find primary and secondary tumors. You can see tissue imbalances because the bioelectric and the plasma circuitry of the body is always abnormal first before the pathological changes set in. So the circuits actually determine the structure and the function of the tissue and even the enzyme activation. And that's why acupuncture works, that's why energetic technology works. A lot of those things have their physical presentation in scar tissue, interfascial adhesions. That's why deep massage is good, fibrous limb. That's why when people are under the stress of electromagnetic pollution like smart meters and Wi-Fi networks and cell towers, what they're doing is there's frequencies that are similar to the frequencies by which cells communicate. They house non-thermal effects. They're not thermal, they're non-thermal effects by inducing specific enzymes like inducible nitric oxide, ornithine transcarbamylase, superoxide dismutase 1, etc. Good and bad, but usually bad. Heavy metals like mercury, ballast, and lights actually have an effect in the same place in the periodic table as zinc metalloenzymes, so they block zinc metalloenzymes for making new DNA and RNA. So the plasma physics is prescient. It actually sets the stage for the secondary messengers or chemical. All the 98% of cellular communication is scalar, is in a sense chromatic. It's basically infrared, far and near infrared spectra. It is linked directly to electromagnetic and boson fields that transfer along the phenolic side groups of the proline side groups of all the collagen in your body. So your body's collagen is actually the superhighway for the plasma body, if you want to call it. Does that model make any sense?
Well, yeah. Once again, the body is a complex feedback system. Let's talk about the process of feedback.
Right, and feedback, by the way, is it's an intelligent system too, is what you're saying. In other words, there's an intelligence to it, and aging and disease is actually a dysfunction in a sense, in mathematical terms, of the plasma physics of disinformation in a sense.
Right, that's a great term, disinformation. It's because the cells, if they reproduce once, okay, why not a million times? Well,
yeah, and why do you die when you got good DNA when you're 90? Right,
and that's where the body aging comes in. That's why a person's face changes, or the rest of their body changes, and then a lot of people do things like, say, drink alcohol, things like that, which break down that communication, that feedback process that allows the cells to reproduce. A lot of people don't understand. They think that their bones were made, and once you're an adult, your bones are set in stone for the rest of your life, and it's really your bones change every couple months. You actually turn over every cell in your bones every couple months. A lot of people don't know that.
Yeah, I tell people that in terms of physical structure, everyone is a pre-adolescent. In other words, some of the oldest things in your body are neurons, but even those, they used to say that you didn't build any new neurons when they've discovered now you have neurocytes. Your bones are rebuilt continuously. Your GI tract, every 4 days, a lot of the cells are recycled. The plasma physics applies there. In the next hour, we'll have you continue, Professor McCanney, and we're going to be joined with John and Ann. This is really important because what you're talking about, what I'm talking about in the body, and what you're talking about in space and our solar system, we're going to kind of connect the dots, and you'll understand on this program, maybe for one of the first times, why we have a separation of Tier 1 and Tier 2 science, why the medical profession destroyed Raymond Rife and would not proceed with the medical positive benefits of Tesla's discoveries in terms of medical health and the dangers of electricity. And we've had experts on talking about that, but we're going to continue in hour 2, and we're going to expand this to the solar system and what's going to happen next and why things are the way they are. With Professor McCanney, John Moore, and Ann Morrison. Welcome back to the NutriMedical Report. And one of the most popular hours of the week is the third hour on Fridays, because we touch on things, we say, like the promo tagline of Star Trek, we go where no man or woman has gone before. We are seeking out new worlds and new life forms. We are literally going to the edge of our imaginations of where the universe goes. And the fact is that when you start to study real history, people like Graham Hancock, who's talked about the fall of ancient civilizations, when you look at the evidence of things that I've received firsthand, having got security clearance at U.S. Space Command, I can tell you right now, knowing firsthand that there is a Tier 1 science world, that most tenured professors in universities, most students, most PhD people have no clue, and much of this information goes back not hundreds but thousands of years to ancient priesthoods, ancient documents, ancient relics that indicate our civilization was a much higher civilization and fell from a much higher level due to a galactic and solar cataclysms. We talked a bit in the last hour with plasma physics, so I want to first hear from John Moore, his latest updates, and then Ann Morrison, we're going to do an update on what happened in the Arkansas nuclear reactor, and then we're going to hear some comments from Professor McCanney, and tie it all together with some big history comments of why now, and what is really happening, what is really going on, connecting the dots, because you'll hear people that harp on just one issue like martial law, or they'll harp on something like just Fukushima, and why is nothing being done, it doesn't make sense. Unless you tie it all together, you won't understand that we don't really have a healthcare system at all. We don't even have, in a sense, a proper religious system, because very few people are, we'll quote, real, what I call Joshua Christians, that are totally understand the nature of our universe and what we are as beings. Very few people understand the plasma physics of the body, because the medical system is designed to keep you sick, just like, in a sense, keep the prey sick while they suck the lifeblood out of us and our finances. And the same with our geopolitical systems, is to keep a ruler class and expand it so they can have absolute power like the ancient pharaohs and the kings of Mesoamerica. So, John, what's the latest in your updates? And then we'll get Ann's report.
Thank you, Dr. Bell. This is mainstream news, but I find it very alarming, and I regard this as the beginning of Chinese colonization of the United States. Two locations. One is being called China City in Sullivan County, New York. It's 600 acres, soon to be 2,000 acres. Now, 600 acres is basically a square mile. More than 2,000 acres later on. That's more than 3 square miles, complete with a high school, a college, housing, businesses, even a casino. And over in Michigan, in the state of Michigan, near Milan, Michigan, another China city encompassing 200 acres, which is about a third of a mile. Now, keep in mind, Washington, D.C. is only 10 square miles, so this is a fairly substantial piece of real estate in New York, more than 3 square miles they plan on developing. And this is typically what countries do when they colonize. They go in and establish their footholds. We did this moving west. I was talking to my friend Tim Spencer this morning about how when the Caucasians moved west, they established forts where they could bring Western, Caucasian culture and business and so forth, and be protected from the natives. And I regard this is what the Chinese are doing in New York and in Michigan, and of course more than 200 free trade zones, which are smaller versions of what we're just discussing.
Yeah, the largest one is in Idaho, where it's 50 square miles, and these are autonomous areas where they're basically, many of the laws of the land, of the state, they say are superseded by them, which is, by the way, illegal, because the 10th Amendment is not possible to do that. And we have an illegal governor of Idaho that actually collaborated with this trade zone, giant trade zone built in Idaho, saying it's going to be, quote, good for business.
Well, don't forget we have a German air base in Texas, I believe it is, somewhere down southwest, since about 1996. The first military base established in the United States since the War of 1812.
I got a question for you. You're in the military. What's the largest air base in America?
Oh, I don't know offhand.
It's in New Mexico. I'll give you a clue. It's in New Mexico. It's bigger than many states in the eastern United States. And by the way, there's an entire contingent of the German and European Air Force there all the time.
Well, the Germans do have their own air base where they're flying their flag down in the southwest. And
yeah, exactly.
It's been there since 1996.
So, yeah, that's really concerning. Now, just a few other facts about this. I had an argument on Wednesday with Harley Schlanger, because he said a difference of opinion. The LaRouche Foundation kind of takes the single track of chess playing, that all we need to do is do good business with China and they'll behave. And I'm going to remember a number of
specific... Thinking like an American, Doctor.
Yeah, and I'm going to explain how that's not correct. Firstly, number one, I know this firsthand because my sister married a man who his family had moved to Canada. We're from Shenzhen, which is just outside Hong Kong. They were bankers and very wealthy people, very intelligent people, and they shot them all in the back of the head when the communist Chinese moved into that area, Shenzhen. And literally my sister's husband, her mother, actually swam across Kowloon Bay and survived by getting to Hong Kong. Now, what people need to understand is my sister traveled as a journalist for the Hong Kong Daily News and speaks 3 different dialects of Chinese, more than actually her mother-in-law was born in China, because she's a linguist. And she traveled through really remote areas up into Mongolia and so on. And the number of girls that have been killed by the communist Chinese, even before the 1979 one-child policy, in the remote areas, they just ignored it. They just kind of, figured the central governments, tell them to go to wherever the Chinese tell you to go, if it's not Hades or hell. And the fact is that there are considered anywhere from 26 to up to 100 million unregistered females in the mainly rural areas in China. In the large cities, especially since 1979, they have now somewhere in excess between 26 and 44 million. It's hard to get actual good numbers of men of marriageable age that can't get a wife unless they get them from Indonesia or Palestine. Those are the primary areas where they try to buy a wife and bring them into China. What's happening is that China is on the verge of a revolution. They've printed more money than the U.S. Federal Reserve, which is neither U.S. nor federal, it's the European banks, more money than the central banks of Europe, more money than the Japanese and the Abe government, and all of the governments on earth. In 5 years, they've printed more credit out of thin air. Number one, they're taking that money and they're buying up farms, they're buying up and setting railways, they're setting up hospital systems, they're putting in ports like the super ports along the Mexican border. They're building nuclear plants to sell power to America with low standards. Some of them, for example, near Ensenada, Mexico, they're actually going to sit, according to the plans that I've heard, only 70 miles south of the Canadian-American Mexican border and south of Tijuana, right on a fault line, okay? So the people need to be aware the Chinese are dangerous. And their elite are trying to crush their own people. They even have recipes of how to cook baby or fetus on their television. They basically treat most of their citizens like garbage, even if they're highly intelligent or well-educated. They say they're going to get rid of the one-child policy, which isn't exactly true either. In the big cities, because a lot of people are non-citizens. The Chinese do what's called multi-track. They do more than one thing. They have an aggressive military policy. They have a incomprehensible criminal economic policy of stealing patents and trying to say, well, if you want to come in and do business in our country. 2.5 years ago, they actually blocked corporations from buying more than 50% of any company in China and bringing in technology. Then they said they want the licenses within 5 to 7 years for all the technology. And then what they've done was companies like Bombardier of Quebec, Canada, that made the best, if you want to call it, rail system for high-speed rail. They took that system and they did minor upgrades to it and then said it's now ours. So dealing with the communist Chinese is like dealing with very bad criminals. And they treat their own people like garbage. The global elite, 80% of the new billionaires on the planet are all PLA members. Hutchinson Whampoa, which owns the Freeport, Bahamas' largest container facility for receiving traffic on planet Earth, the largest facility. The other one that's being built is in Villa Cardenas in South Mexico that will connect to the so-called Trans-Texas Corridor, which, by the way, is still being built in pieces, despite liars like Governor Perry and others that says not. We have the Chinese are taking over everywhere, including now they just consumed and took over complete control of all the oil out of Ecuador. So that gives you a little perspective on what we're dealing with here. And so people who aren't informed, or people that try to snow Dr. Deagle, or anybody that comes in this program like John, Ann, and Professor McCanny, be warned, you can't snow us. We're back in a moment with John, Ann, and Professor McCanny. Welcome back. And we have, I got a news report. I think that, John, you sent this to Ann to get an opinion on what happened in Arkansas. What did you find? And you sent 3 emails today. And what did you find in your review of that incident in Arkansas? Was it a big event? Was it a minor event? What happened?
Well, it looked like there was a power surge coming in from off-site because the transformer blew. And then, they use off-site power to run the plant, and then the plant generates electricity that they send out over high power lines.
Yeah.
So if you don't have local power off-site, then you don't have the nuclear reactor will shut down. And what happened was that there seems to have been a power surge, and it came in, it blew out the transformer, so there was a scram, and it was an automatic scram by the reactor, and that was reactor number 2. Now, that same reactor was down in March because a crane had fallen onto it. And at that time, there's 1 person killed and 8 people injured. But then they were back up in April. And right now, as near as I can tell, they're still down. Now, they have to wait 3 days because of the xenon. And when they do a scram, what they do is they insert the control rods. And
what does the xenon do? Because you mentioned this before, so people will catch on. Xenon's generated by the scram, and if you reinsert the rods, you have problems. What kind of problems happen if you reinsert before you get rid of the xenon?
You have Chernobyl.
Right. Now, also, by the way, the xenon is a gas that doesn't degrade, and when it gets to the upper atmosphere, it's a very major detoxicant for the ozone layer, along with radioiodine-131, which degrades pretty fast, but xenon doesn't. And these things, when they get to the upper atmosphere, they destroy the ozone layer, so you get high-energy UVB, C, and D. A tans you, B burns you, C is cancer, which I call it cancer, C or kill, and D is death. So these are dangerous, and what's happening is Fukushima continues, it's chewing up the ozone layer.
Right. Well, in this case, the xenon is made in the fuel rods. When the control rods are inserted, the xenon is created by the fuel rods. And the xenon has a 9-hour, let me turn down this, has a 9-hour half-life. So you take 9 hours, you multiply by 4, that's 36 hours, that's a day and a half. So so it
goes pretty quickly, Yeah,
it has to cool down for at least 36 hours. Well, in this case, it's been more than 36 hours, and they still don't have reactor 2 up.
Oh, really? What do you think is happening? Do you think it's more that, do you think they lost other equipment inside the containment? Because we know when a few keystrokes in Yuma, Arizona caused the power outage at San Onofre, 12 miles from where I live here in north side of Pendleton Marine Corps Base, we know what it did is it caused the so-called non-certified engineering changes to cause a leak in the steam turbine systems, so they actually released a massive amount of radiation. Tritium, strontium, thorium, all kinds of nasties were released from that reactor, because my detector went up 5 times above normal. 5 times, which is well into hazmat level.
You can thank Mitsubishi for that.
Yeah.
Apparently
and General Electric.
Well, yeah, they were the ones that requested the equipment. Apparently they had trouble converting from some of the English units to the metric units or whatever. But in any case, no, I think what's happened is that the transformer blew. Well, that took out the diesel generator. And the diesel generators, as John will tell you, are hard to replace. You don't just call up your local distribution center and get a diesel generator. You have to order it from the factory, and it has to be shipped out. And also transformers. As John will tell you, transformers are very hard to replace. And if it blew out a transformer, it might be a while before they can replace that. And then they have to install it, of course, and all that. So I don't think so. But the reactor 2 may be down for some time. They haven't said.
Exactly. Now, you sent me a couple of other things here as well. One of them was in remediation. I tell people a lot of the information that's published by the government on remediation is anywhere from 20 to 30 to 50 years out of date. Like they're stockpiling potassium iodate for the population. 10 days of it, and you're going to get polyneuropathy, renal damage, and retinal damage to your eyes. It's very dangerous. Radiation remediation means, firstly, HEPA filters in your furnace in your home, sealing your home off, making sure you have adequate filtered water and food, for a period of time when the radiation passes. You can get a data logging radiation detector you can hook up outside your home, run the USB cord into your computer, and you can detect the radiation surge, because I tell people, unless you've moved beforehand or can move at right angles to the radiation plume, you're just stupid to get on the freeways. You need to know it's coming and then get out of its way. The best thing to do is hunker down and try not to get on the freeways. You're going to get into a mess. And
yeah, time, distance, and shielding. And the
exactly.
shielding
is
cement. Cement.
Right, we have our radiation. Our radiation kit includes the NutriDefense for immune support, Keeler Max, Nutritrella, cell detox glutathione, liquid zeolite, mitochondrial support from Nutriodine, mitochondrial catalyst, mitocarotene, CoQ10. What happens is the mitochondria are one of the first to fail. They get superheat basically, because there already is a danger of free radicals, and if you superheat the mitochondria, the cell gets what's called a death signal. And then the first thing that happens, your natural killer cells decrease their ability, and you start getting sepsis and gangrene. Right. It's very nasty. And what happens is we're already probably getting what I call low-level chronic CNS, gastrointestinal, and blood radiation toxicity. And if you get major surges, you're going to see it become more evident. In certain groups of the population, the unborn, the elderly, people with metabolic problems or pre-existing conditions like autism or mental illness, they're going to deteriorate further. So this is literally what we call the zombie apocalypse, because you disconnect, when you increase low-grade radiation levels, you disconnect the frontal lobes from the brain. So
right. The other thing that I also sent you the hot, warm, and cold zones, and as a doc file. And what they'll do is, if there's a nuclear event or a radiation event, they'll set up zones. They'll set up a hot zone called exclusion, and they'll put a perimeter around that.
Yeah, we talked about that on the show last week with FEMA back in March of 2001, and they were talking about setting a hot zone, but their hot zone may be 3 miles, where I say around the Federal Center in Denver, because we use that as an example, because we did war game simulations right at the Federal Center with the FBI and CDC and hazmat teams from Presbyterian St. Luke's and other big hospitals, their University Hospital of Colorado. People need to understand that these are very arbitrary a lot of times, and if you're closed off in these hot zones, you're not allowed to get out, and don't attempt to decontaminate either. The thing is, if you try to get out, you're an enemy combatant. They shoot to kill and put you in a body bag. That's what they do.
That's right. So you have about 30 to 45 minutes to get away from whatever the event is. And that means as soon as you hear of the event or you see the cloud, you get in your car and you get out of there. Or you travel by foot. You can walk 5 miles in an hour, so you can get 5 miles away from it in an hour. And even
if you carry a radiation detector, you can know which way is 90 degrees from the plume.
Well, that's true.
All you have to do is you got to know what direction. If the numbers are starting to kind of shoot up again, you're probably not walking at 90 degrees to the plume.
That's probably right. Yes. Anyway,
so it gives you an idea.
If you're in the hot zone, you want to get to the warm zone. If you're in the warm zone, you want to get to the cold zone. And
that's good information.
Yeah.
Let's hear from Professor McKinney when we get back.
We're going to hear from Professor McKinney, and we'll hear some
by corrupt.
Come back, and we are going to hear from Professor James McKinney. His website is jmccsci.com, jmccsci.com, and we have Ann Morrison and John Moore here as well to ask some great questions. Professor McKinney, let's roll back. One of the things that you've crystallized very clearly, probably more than anybody else, is not only the plasma universe model, which I think the ISON comment is a perfect demonstration, but the horrendous danger to the public and to the independent, strong nations of the world of a firewall between Tier 1 and Tier 2 science. And just like the mini-series or mega-series, the Battlestar Galactica that went over many years, I think that this has happened before. I think our human beings have done stupid things to crash civilization when there's galactic and solar events where nations should be working together to protect themselves, and instead they're either fighting each other or the elite are sequestering information away from the public so that no one's prepared for the cataclysm when it comes. And the elite that are based on high technology are swept away quickly, and the survivors are subsistence living on marginal technology. Let's put it back to the Stone Age, literally. So
they thrive on discord. Let's put it that way. They have learned that and now these formulas are ancient. The formulas that are being used to control the public today, to come into a country, put in worthless money, to begin charging interest, which was outlawed in all of the old ancient texts, to create enemies between countries. So they create a boogeyman over there, and we have to rise up here and fight them, and that country thinks that we're the boogeyman, and the central bankers loaning to both sides. Discord, disarray, terrorism, the protection racket in the governments, all of this is age-old. These are age-old techniques in controlling the public. So we're seeing that, but what I've been concentrating on lately is the misinformation of what I call Tier 2 science. And it's staggering the amount of investment they are putting into this. Let me just give a little example. When I don't go to the American Geophysical Union meetings anymore because they're basically worthless. But you see 17,000 scientists attending these for 1 week. They're credentialed. They come from universities or government-supported industry, all with credentials, with affiliations, and lots of money backing them up in their projects. They're all, in government-supported projects. But what you see is the vast amount of money that it takes to support this, to fly these scientists around. 17,000 scientists, they're all on the government dole or their foreign government dole, whatever it is. But none of them, not a single one of these people having a clue that there's an entire layer of science above them about which they know nothing. These people are there to provide phony, misguided science. And this is staggering. Now, and so the public really is completely unaware of this. So what I'm trying to do is make an effort to expose this. And
you had some good examples, Professor McKinney, before the show.
Yes.
You had some good examples before the program of some serendipitous contacts that showed that the CIA was spending literally billions to try to put disinfo, to sideline your information, to create enough obfuscation of an issue that people don't take the plasma model seriously, which will give us, not only tell us the dangers of things like comets and space weather and near space objects, but also the opportunities of limitless energy. Tell us about that, because when you mentioned that this morning, I thought, wow, this is an important story that needs to get out to the public, because you're not going to hear it on the regular media. It's just not going to get out there.
Yeah, this is something that we discovered recently, that there's a group of organizations that have been formed through Europe, branching to the United States, and basically they're phony organizations. They started giving each other awards. They have impressive names, and what you find is that the people on the awards panel that decide who gets the awards are the same people that get the awards. And they're calling these prestigious gold awards for international scientific achievement. And it's just a series of phony organizations. And the more they give out awards, the more it looks like they are legitimate. What they've done also is they've kind of flown a banner of openness and various high moral type standards in the sciences as a banner for people to support this. So they've gone out and solicited literally hundreds of international credentialed scientists to join in this by putting their name on it, but they don't understand that at the top of this, you have a bunch of phony wannabes that are giving themselves prizes for international scientific achievement, and most of these people are not scientists. They don't have any scientific degrees. They've never worked in any sort of legitimate science in their lives, and this is... When we look at the base of this, it goes back down into the CIA, and what they're trying to do is legitimize these people through phony organizations.
John, you're a forensic investigator. You're a forensic investigator, John. when you hear this is so shocking. You have to be sitting down, as I say, you have your tray table in the upright and locked position. When you hear this kind of comment from a credentialed scientist that's respected, Professor McKinney, who's telling you that they're specifically attacking his release of information because they want to keep it sequestered in Tier 1 science. When there's smoke, there's fire. Obviously, the globalists don't want us to know they have built giant underground, quote, hotels or underground facilities everywhere, under off-world space platforms, sequestered science to protect themselves from whatever's coming. And by the way, if you want to compare it, you only need to stay underground for 2 weeks if it's a nuclear war. What they're preparing for is much worse. Whether it's an ice age like the Younger Dryas one 13,000 years ago, or it's something worse, like a gamma burst, they're preparing for something very bad. And the fact is that the globalists don't give a rat's behind what happens to the general population. What's your analysis when you hear this from Professor McKinney? Because this new revelation, I think, is relatively...
Right. Well, I've had time to think about this since I first heard about this 2 days ago. We're dealing with very well organized, very well financed, very bright people who have a plan and they're following their plan to the T to accomplish their goals of orchestration of disinformation at a level that will convince almost everybody who doesn't have the kind of credentials Professor McKinney has, convince almost everybody of the veracity of what they're doing, being truthful. And for the most part, they'll be 98% successful.
Yeah. And of course, the whole education process is to beat out of people the idea of thinking out of the box or looking for new pattern recognition or paradigms. The educational system is not designed like Nikola Tesla would say, or the ancient philosophers like Aristotle or Leonardo da Vinci that says his most important goal was to teach people to ask better questions. No, the goal of the education system is to make sure you don't ask questions.
Well, reading, writing, and arithmetic, the fourth R, reasoning, has been left out. Yeah,
exactly. That's a good one.
So in place of reasoning, I think they have regurgitation. And that's what gets you an A, that's what gets you a PhD, that's what gets you a government job, and that's what gets you a retirement pension if you just keep your mouth shut.
I'm going to use the KISS principle here and just throw out the things that are most likely. We've had over the years Robert Felix on talking about Ice Age now. I've researched the issues of Graham Hancock's work on the ancient civilization that crashed. Somewhere around the last crash was about 13,000 years ago during the Younger Dryas period, where he postulates that there was a broken comet that passed Earth. Probably not an impact, but at least caused major geotectonic and plasma effects that caused dust and volcanism to cause a 1,000-year ice age. And once it gets rocking and rolling, it doesn't take long for that ice sheet to come all the way down to the central United States, all the way to the Missouri River. People don't realize that an ice fall was on the north side of the Missouri, and the south side was basically 5 degrees cooler than normal, but otherwise intact during the ice fall. And that ice fall was over, I think, 1,000, 2,000 feet of ice. Back in a moment with more from Professor McKinney, John Moore, and Ann Morrison. Welcome back. And you had a couple of comments with Professor McKinney, and Professor McKinney, I guess the way we have to connect the dots here is that you've said this repeatedly, and you've got really good evidence for it, is that the globalists are planning to survive and want to reduce the population. The genocide is happening because nobody's doing anything about Fukushima. If there was something positive to be used, like, for example, you wouldn't use Correx at 9,500 in the Macondo drill site in the Gulf of Mexico. There are other divisions of our U.S. military use non-toxic equivalents that wouldn't cause this. The experts from Europe that were going to come in and help clean up the mess there that destroyed the loop current, those experts said, you don't have to use Corexit. We can remove this oil and get it out of there and all the toxins without the danger of Corexit, which is destroying shrimp and taking their eyes out of their head and causing birth defects and doing lots of other things. I think they're on a rampage, and I really think that 2014, the opportunity is we could have Glass-Steagall, we could remove Obama, we could get control of Fukushima by moving our military and our top experts around the world to control this mess. The downside is I just generally find that human beings don't marshal their efforts until they're too far gone. And people aren't going to pay attention until things are so awful, whether heading into an ice age or North America's food is radioactive because Fukushima is not solved in, say, 2, 3, or 5 years, that human beings won't believe it until they can't have a normal child and the child's coming up with, say, cyclops or severe mental retardation or all kinds of birth defects. People aren't going to get it, are they? That's my general impression.
Go ahead, Professor.
Yeah, Professor McKinney, what do you think?
Well, Dr. Bill, you have a way of putting these all of these issues together.
I'm trying to put them together because we get geniuses like yourself and investigative journalists like John and scientists like Ann, and we tie all these pieces together. It makes a very emotionally charged kind of thing you can't just kind of dismiss, because a lot of people like to dismiss us and say, well, you're just a nut, or you're negative, or you're always trying to flog, just frighten us. No, we're trying to save civilization. We want to have our neighbors prepped, just like all the early settlers of America. We want to have our civilization aware that we do not have a U.S. federal government. We have a globalist government that's usurped power and taken over our federal government. We have a Tier 1 science that's sequestered away to private corporations. Even at the universities, they recruit people from the universities to go into Tier 1 science, like they've done to me several times, to go into Tier 1 science. The last major time was in the late 1970s when I was recruited to actually work on a DARPA super soldier program when I was going to work on World MS Tissue Repository with Dr. Wallace Tortolot at UCLA and the VA hospital. So I got to tell you, it makes me extremely angry when people think that this isn't a reality and it's going to put civilization in grave danger. What you're saying is probably one of the most important conclusions you can make as a scientist in terms of how science ties in with the chance of survival of society, and just how desperate the government is and the globalists are to make sure that we remain stupid and won't ask the questions, or we continue being persecuted by pseudo-bloggers, pseudo-news broadcasters, pseudo-TV broadcasters, regular, we call media, or I call it the mediums of the media. Or like, for example, with space weather or space science of any kind, they want space in your head
and blended, and these go through filters, final filters, before anything reaches the public, and you see them repeating over and over certain catchphrases, and they're just trying to pound this into the public, little icy wonder regarding a snowball. I mean, how many hundreds of different ways can they say that? But they have to continually repeat it, almost like a first grader. How would you repeat a first grader to remember, the allegiance to the flag, or a prayer or whatever? You repeat it and repeat it, and if and the people continue to do this, let's look at how they look at comets. We just had Comet Ison. What was the coverage of Comet Ison? They showed a white tail in amateur pictures, and they only talked about the white tail. When it sprouted wings, they go, well, comets are complex. We sure have a lot to learn, but they're still these dirty little snowballs. The level of coverage is so Mickey Mouse.
It is. And they don't even tell you about the core. You mentioned that this morning, that the core could be a solid core, and there really is technically no difference between asteroids and comets. Now, here's how this all ties together. And John, your classified document you sent me from your sources in the government that we talked about last week and the week before,
right.
This is really important. To summarize, and we're not putting dates on this, DHS has said by the spring of 2017, everyone in America will have an ID. Biometric. And by the way, DHS doesn't have limits. They can ask for iris scan, DNA, body terahertz scan, so they can hit you at 400 meters, so you're driving in your car at 70 miles an hour on the freeway. They don't just want a tag on your license plate. They want to know who's driving. If you want to get secure access to a building, you're going to have to go supply a micro drop of blood. And I've actually visited the Building 10 facility in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, and the Chicago facility for Affymetrix, where they make the DNA biochip. So I can give you exquisite technical detail how they use bacterial endonucleases and microchip analysis using advanced scalar technology to actually analyze your DNA in 5 minutes from any other individual on Earth. And by 1999, they had the cost down to 42 cents per chip and could use it with a laptop. So when people try to dismiss what we're saying here, you're going to lose. In fact, very few people are stupid enough to call into this program and disagree. Being disagreeable when you have facts this heavy, literally tons and tons of glaring, ugly facts. What we have to do is face the music that we can come to a solution and we can be positive. This is the time of the year when we are celebrating Jesus, Yeshua HaMashiach. His real birthday was probably in September. His actual first birthday was September 11th, 3 BC. That's his actual birthday. And it's based on astronomical facts and the facts in the Bible that talk about him 6 months younger than John the Baptist. But if you look at all these facts, we have a globalist elite that want to enslave us, use our biometrics like the mark of the beast to enslave us and control us, destroy all our wealth. Obama is there to deconstruct America, and it's not just America. It doesn't matter if it's Uganda or China or Russia or Ukraine, where they had last night. I was preempted in the second hour, went to the third hour, that they tried a orange revolution, and the response by John Kerry is, the Ukrainian people deserve better. Come on, John Kerry, skull and bonesman, telling your wet dreams while you're masturbating in a coffin, half naked with your buddy George Bush at the Bonesman's Lodge there on the campus of Yale University. This is sickening. And we've got to stop tolerating this kind of stuff, whether it's in universities or politics or religious systems. And a lot of these so-called religious leaders, scientific leaders, other people, they need to be dismissed. We are the news, they're the snooze. They put you to sleep, and they turn you into a zombie, a brainless golem ready to be destroyed. Your comments, John and Ann.
Well, Doctor, our opposition is well organized, well financed. They have a plan, and they will carry out their plan outlined in the Georgia Guidestones to eliminate 90% of the people on this planet, 95% of the people on this planet. That's their goal, and they're doing everything they can to achieve it.
Now, one of the things that people expect, and I'm saying it's the exact opposite that's going to happen. Yes, they're trying to destroy the middle class, but what they're going to do is they're going to open the spigot for credit once they get a biometric system, and we're going to see not a period of economic catastrophe, even though they're not controlling Fukushima, and even though we're eating radioactive food like they're going to serve to the Japanese government radioactive rice grown in prefectures right around Fukushima, believe it or not. But what they're going to do is they're going to open up that spigot. At the same time, they're increasing biometric controls so they know where your car is and your car track can shut your car down because they don't want you to move. They'll know where your cell phone is to a cubic meter, and they'll talk to chips that you've taken because you've taken what's called authentication pills ordered by Obamacare that you must authenticate to your cell phone that you've taken your medications. That's where this is all going. People say, no, Dr. Deagle, you're delusional. No, I'm not. You wish so. You wish that I was mentally ill. You wish I was crazy. No, I have a titanium alloy backbone, and I have the Spirit of the Most High God in me. And so these fantastic people here on this program, they understand that this is the final battle for mankind. This is the final one. Many of us are going to die in so many years, even if we have a natural life. But civilization, this is the final chance for human beings to break the bonds of evil. And it's only going to happen if we rise up and we ascend and take our scepters and be sons and daughters of the Most High. And if we throw off this bonds of things like Tier 1 and Tier 2 science and the lies that our government are making that they're taking care of us all right, or that they're teaching us or our kids, all of it is lies. Your comments, Ann and Professor McCanny and John.
Go ahead, Ann.
Yeah, I've always said if you don't have a scientifically astute public, you can push anything over on them because science teaches you how to think, how to reason, how to come to logical results. And if the most the science is given, the most the public is given is pretty little pictures of a comet and an explanation that couldn't possibly be true.
You know God has a plan for each of us. Sometimes you let go and just trust that the mess leads to a message And what you think is a curse could be your greatest blessing. On a lonely road out nowhere, going circles, feeling so scared. I've been caught in the middle of this crazy world. Sometimes it feels like it is endless hill. I've had pain, I've had doubt, I've lost everything that mattered, and somehow it all worked out. I praise Jesus in the storm. He heard me calling. From the hookers to the gamblers, to disloyal Judas and Peter, Jesus forgave them. He forgives you for all your sins. They nailed his right hand and the left hand. The Son of God cried out in pain, my God, why have you forsaken me? You know God has a plan for each of us, and sometimes you let go and just trust that the mess leads to a message, and what you think is a curse could be your greatest blessing. Jesus died that day, Calvary. His precious blood, it saved me. He rose up and said, be of good cheer. I have overcome the world here. So Jesus understands me, my pain. From the cross he overcame. Oh, God is faithful, God is good. No one gets lost in God's neighborhood. So who am I to complain? I'm a child of God and he knows my name. Oh Jesus, see you in the end. You are my best friend. God is faithful, God is good. God is faithful, God is good, God is faithful, God is good. Hallelujah. God is faithful, God is good. God is faithful, God is good. God is faithful, God is good. You know God has a plan for each of us, and sometimes you let go, just trust.